Guys, how to put in a stage 1 cam in a Rhino 700. We've done a stage 2, had a little fueling issues. We're going to try stage 1. Got lucky enough to have Eric come down from all the way from Arkansas to bring his Rhino down here to us. Try it out. It's a cam only install. He's already got the Muzzy pipe and MSD, which would be required before you put the cam in. Also, just a note up front, one of the things that I'm going to do, I'm not going to say is 100% the right way to do, but it's the way we're going to do it. I don't necessarily recommend you do this, but you, as I usually say, let your conscience be your guide. Eric reminded me that he's not from Arkansas, he is from Texas. So he come a long way to get us to do this. Anyway, back to the bearing. The new camshaft comes with a bearing on it. We're going to remove the bearing and use the bearing that's already in his head. If he had some mechanical problem, we wouldn't reuse the stock bearing. But if you want to use the stock bearing, and technically you should, you're going to have to most likely pull the head, get a blind bearing removing tool and a rocker arm shaft tool, or make you one out of some 6mm screws to pull the rocker arm shafts to get the bearing out. We don't want to do that. We've done it in the past and find that this bearing is already in there, as long as we haven't overheated or oil drained, whatever, is fine. So anyway, we're supposed to get started on it. Shouldn't really take us that long. It's a pretty easy process, and this is one of those things most anybody could do. Okay, I don't guess there really is a first thing to do necessarily, but what I like to do, this is your cam chain tensioner, and before you pull this thing out, you might want to take this loose, because it's real hard to get out with the unit out. All right, put all your parts in a box. This thing's hot. And I'm going to go ahead and take the cam chain tensioner out. It's a 5 millimeter Allen. Alright, careful here. Most likely you will mess up this gasket. We'll probably include this gasket. Alright, lucky for me I didn't mess it up. Maybe lucky for Eric. Alright, the next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and take off the cam chain or cam shaft cover. It is a 8mm socket. Most of the time you can pull it off. Sometimes take a little screwdriver. Be careful. There's an O-ring in here. You don't want to tear it up. Maybe that'll be another something we need to include in our kit. You got this O-ring here. Just lay that over the side, and that exposes our cam shaft gear. Okay, now we're going to take an 8mm socket. Take the valve covers off. We'll unplug the intake air sensor where you get to the nut or bolt. Don't forget to plug that back up. Okay, I'm going to go on the back side, take out those 4 screws on the exhaust valve cover. Okay, if you're like me, you do not have a 14mm Allen head. There's a cap down here on the crankshaft on this cover, or the magneto cover. What I do is I use a 14mm bolt and a pair of vice grips. Pretty redneck way of doing it, but like the Marines, you doubt and overcome. Alright. And once you get it loose, you can take your bolt, put in the cover, take it off. Alright, then I couldn't tell you the size of Allen head on this other little plug here, but you got another little plug right up to the right, about 2 o'clock position. You probably can't see from the camera angle. Okay, what we took that off for is there's a nut on the flywheel down here, and we use that to turn the motor. Just so happens that where this motor come to rest, the motor's almost at top dead center. There's a mark on our cam chain gear right here. My mark, you couldn't obviously, no way you can see it in the camera. There's a mark straight up and down on it, and then the alignment mark for the head is right here. Now, I promise you, it's real hard to rotate the cam in the head without the chain and this, that, and the other. So the best thing to do before you pull your cam out is get it relatively close to the mark. We worry about exact when we put it back in, but get it close to so that the piston's on top dead center. So I'm going to take my socket, it's 22 millimeter, and put in through my hole here and rotate the engine. And I'll tell you something else is smart is take the spark plug out. We'll do that on the tail end because you don't want to stay on top dead center when you have the plug in there. The compression wants to roll it over. Okay, one important thing here is you do not want your cam chain falling down in your motor. Now, I take a piece of welding wire and put around my chain before I ever take it off. Okay. Then I just simply tie it off to the roll bar here, because like I said, you don't want it to drop. I mean, I've done it and you can get it out, but it ain't easy. Okay, now we're going to take our 10 millimeter and take, only thing you really need to take off at this point, well actually I done figured this out too. Go ahead and take the two 10 millimeter bolts. I don't even know what I guess this is a decompression mechanism on the end of the camshaft, because you got to get it off, and it's real hard to get off once the cam's in your hand. So go ahead and take your two there out. Another little tidbit of information is just to help keep you from dropping a screw down in the motor, which you can't get out without getting in the motor. Just put you a rag. I got a paper towel right here under it, and then take your screws out. Hot. Alright. Now, be careful because there's a little part. Well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to back up the punt here. Don't take your screws all the way out. Get them loosened up, because that decompression mechanism is a little bitty pin in the cam, and if you take it all the way out, it'll fall out in the head and you may not find it. So leave those in, and then just take out your two cam gear screws. Okay, I don't know how much I was blocking off the camera. Alright, I use what I call a dental tool, but a pick. You reach in the top cam gear. Of course, you can pull your rag out at this point. Pull your cam gear off. Now, like I said, don't do this when it's hot like I'm doing it. Woo, hot, hot. You don't have to worry about your cam chain going anywhere because you tied it off. Alright, our cam chain's out. Now I'm going to show you that mark. I don't know if you can see it here in the camera. There's a little line right here. When we put this back in, this has to line up with that mark on top of the head there. Okay. Now I'm going to push my cam chain down in there a little bit where I can get my cam out. There's a little plate in here. I guess you want to call it a bearing retainer, cam retainer, two 8 millimeter screws. Again, you should have your rag in here still at this point. I'm running without it. Okay. Got that screw. Now, sometimes that little bearing retainer deal fall down in there. So it's probably just a good idea to leave this rag in there for the screws and to keep the bearing retainer going down in the motor. I'm just going to keep it rag right in there. Now you can't get this retainer out till you pull the camshaft out just a little bit. Alright, now we're going to go back to prying on the cam a little bit. I actually didn't take much prying at all. Our cam is basically out. It's hot. And our little retainer, there we are. Let's see. Our little retainer fell down in there and the rag saved us. Alright, I'm holding it with a pair of pliers because it's hot, but here's our stock camshaft. Okay, now we can take our decompression mechanism out. Just take your screw that you had, slide this off the top, and here's this, I call it a little shaft. There's going to be some oil in here too. Let me go dump my oil. Okay, now then, lastly, you've got your decompression pin. You got this little decompression pin right here to put back in. Alright, we got to prepare our new shaft for the motor first. Alright, now like I said, the new camshaft comes with a bearing. And what we're going to do is tap it off. What I like to do is open the vise up, and don't touch the cam loads, but just where the bearing is resting on it, and then take a socket and a hammer. Come on over. You usually got to have some help. Just put your hand under it. Catch it. Alright. So like I say, they're not pressed on, they're just put in. Now we're going to put our pin back in. It does have an orientation. If it's hard to catch in the camera, let's see. You see the little notches right there? And then you got your part that actually does the decompression. Alright, if the cam is sitting like this in the motor, the pin, the cut is going to go, I'm looking backwards in the camera, but I'll say to the 9 o'clock position, with this being 12, 6, 9. Alright, then your little shaft goes back in. It's got a little pin on it and a place for the decompression to go in, and it too goes about the 9 o'clock position. You kind of got to fiddle with it to get it to line back up. Alright, now I'm back in, and this thing will rotate from probably, well, from 9 o'clock there to about 6. Okay, like I said, we're going to put our mechanism back on. You got this slot in the little shaft, and there's a pin right here in the spring-loaded deal. Alright, you must get it in there. I can tell you that it's pretty common for somebody not to get that little pin in it or put it right on top, and this sucker will have a hard time starting. Alright, then go ahead and finger tight your screw back in, and that way you don't have to worry about your decompression falling out or anything. Okay, we're ready to go back in with a new camshaft. I put some assembly lube on it. Move my wire over. May be blocking the camera, but I apologize. Everything, it's got to go back in the orientation just like it come out. I can feel it getting started in the rear. I'm going to take, it's real hard to get in here, bump it a little bit. Alright, now just want to get it started, because you need to try to get your cam bearing retainer piece in here. Alright, it's going to be about next to impossible to hold everything and get that in there. You just kind of got to work it. cam's not quite in. Okay, I don't have the cam quite in, but I've got it close enough that I can get one screw started in the bearing retainer. To me, that's the hardest part. Alright, it's started. And I'm going to go ahead and start the second one. Just get them halfway in there. Alright. Just don't hit that pin. And you can also look in the bottom, make sure your bearing's flush. At that point, we can tighten up our two screws and our bearing retainer. I'm sure there's a torque spec on this. I recommend you find it out or email me. I'll look it up in the service manual. I just kind of go off what feels right. After 2 championships, an endurance race win, and it never no failure, we're going to stick with it. Okay, now what I'm doing is, well, you can't really tighten up your screws on your cam yet because you ain't got your chain on. So I just put the other one in finger tight. Okay, I'm not going to be able to show you this as I do. Okay, alright, now down here we've got our hole in the magneto cover where I can turn the crankshaft. There's an inspection port right here where I took out earlier. It has a little mark. I doubt you can see it in the camera right here. And what you're going to be trying to do is the flywheel in here, we're going to turn it until the marks line up on the flywheel with this. Now in the flywheel there's a set of marks that looks like this and one that looks like this. This one is for engine timing and the single mark is for top dead center. So what you want to do is rotate the engine around with the socket, and it's real crucial to kind of hold it there. You got to keep checking, and then get your mark on your flywheel to line up with a little bitty indentation in here. And the way I do it is I get down low and take a flashlight and look in here from the side. And again, just from the camera angle, I'm not going to be able to show you that. Alright, before you start turning, you want to get your cam chain up because you don't want it turning on the crank. So I usually put a screwdriver or something to where it'll turn while I'm checking this for getting it lined up. Okay, I kind of got lost and I had to make a complete revolution. I got my 2 marks lined up on each side. Coming a little further, this is where you got to be real careful. Make sure your plug is out because it won't pop over. Alright, now it just went by because it don't want to stay on top dead. And I pulled it back. And I'm pretty much dead on right there. Go ahead and get you a Sharpie out or something, a magic marker, because doubt, if you're like me, you're not going to get it in right the first time, and then you'll find out how many tooth you need to move. You mark it on a chain and a gear and get it over there. So go ahead and take your wire off. Hold your chain. Pull your screwdriver out. Alright, now the way that I do it is I know that I'm relatively top dead center right now, and I pull my chain up to my mark right up here on the head and kind of get me a general idea of where that mark is going to go. And like I said, usually you wind up doing this twice, and then like I said, there's a little, it ain't no trick. There's a trick. I wish I knew it. Getting this cam chain. Don't drop it, whatever you do. Sometimes you just got to start over. Okay, basically I finally got my cam on. I know it's in the wrong place, but like I said, sometimes you just have to get it close. Got it up on the two little pins. What I'm going to do is get my alignment mark back up, hold it in place. Okay, we're good. And this is what I was talking about with the Sharpie. Alright, here's top dead. I'm going to mark the chain where top dead is. And then I'm going to pull the cam gear back out and align my mark with that spot. Okay, I don't know if you can see in the camera, my mark's here. I've got to go over about 2 teeth. Okay, after a couple of tries, I got it. And what you want to do is go back to your hole, look in like I'm doing, make sure your single mark's lined up, and then come and try to look. You got to look for this roll bar out. Sometimes I'm peeking through little holes to make sure that our mark on our cam is lined up with this, and it is. So all that's lined up. Okay, now we simply start putting it back. I'm going to start with my cam chain screws, gear screws. It won't matter so much turn the engine here, but I tell you what, it's probably not a bad idea to do at this point just before you tighten these up, in case you do actually turn the motor over. So we'll go ahead and adjust the valves. I've got the 2 screws in. The cam gear can't come off. You know, we're good. Timing, it's not going to come out of whack. So we're going to go ahead and adjust the valves. Okay, now I've got a little old fancy little tool for adjusting valves. If you hadn't got one of these, a 10mm and a little pair of pliers would do it, but it's kind of, sometimes it's hard to hold the center and tighten the nut at the same time. Like I said, I got this little tool, so I'm gonna well, might as well just check them. I doubt they're in spec, but we're gonna check it. I'm putting 3/1000 feeler gauge. It's loose. Loosen it up. Go ahead and loosen the other one up. Okay, put my tool back on. My feeler gauge. Turn my till it's snug, not where it can't get it out. And then hold the center. If you have this tool, hold it. Tighten up the nut. Now, if you want to use this video for just adjusting valves, what you have to do is get your motor on top dead center, just like we've been doing for the cam. Alright. Put your feeler gauge between the top of the valve and the tappet, or whatever they call it. Screw it down, get it snug. Feel it still. We're good. Alright, the intakes are adjusted. Now we're going to do the exhaust. I'm going to do it at 5/1000. And we're going to do them basically the same way. Okay, now I'm going to tighten up my cam screws. And like I said, I'm sure as a torque spec, I go to what feels right for me. I don't guess there's any particular way for it to go back on. Eric's gasket looks really good, so we can reuse it. But I'm going to show you something. You got to push this little mechanism in and then slide it back. When we put our plug in, it's spring loaded and it's going to push it out. As a matter of fact, I'll just show you. And this is what puts pressure on your cam chain, okay? Now you can't get it back in unless you push this little mechanism, slide it back in. Okay, like I said, this gasket's good, so we're gonna set it back in. Get his screws. You can go ahead and tighten these. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Okay, now we're going to put our spring in. It's got this copper washer, nut, the little rod. Push it down in there. You can do it finger tight. Take a 19mm socket, tighten it back up. Okay, that's done. Cam chain's in full tension now. Alright. Basically, there's really no need you watch me put this back together. All we're going to do is put our valve covers back on, screw them down, don't over tighten them, put our cam chain cover on, and plug our air intake manifold sensor. So, I mean, you took it off, you can put it back on. So that's the install part in a nutshell.